Have you ever found yourself in the middle of a lively social gathering, surrounded by people who are effortlessly bouncing from topic to topic? The weather, the latest news, what they had for lunch, and felt an inexplicable, heavy sense of exhaustion? It isn't that you don't like the people there. It isn't even necessarily that you're shy. But there is a specific kind of fatigue that sets in when you realize you are expected to participate in the social dance of small talk. While others seem energized by the chatter, you might find yourself looking for the nearest exit, or perhaps looking for that one person who is comfortable just sitting there. If you've ever felt like a conversation about nothing is actually more draining than a conversation about everything, there is a very specific psychological reason for that. It's not a flaw in your personality. It's a blueprint of your nervous system. When we talk about small talk, we're really talking about a cognitive performance. For a certain type of person, small talk isn't just light conversation. It's a high-stakes puzzle. You have to monitor your facial expressions, find the right time to nod, and search for a socially acceptable response to a question you aren't actually interested in. Psychologically, this creates what we call a heavy cognitive load. Your brain is working overtime to maintain the surface of the interaction. But because the content of the conversation lacks depth, there is no emotional reward to balance out the energy you're spending. It's all output and no input. You're essentially running a high-powered engine in neutral. You're burning fuel, but you aren't going anywhere. People who feel this way often possess what psychologists call a high internal stimulation threshold. Inside your mind, things are already quite busy. You might have a constant stream of thoughts, reflections, or observations running in the background of your consciousness. Because your inner world is already so vivid and active, adding social noise on top of it feels like sensory overload. To you, small talk isn't a bridge to connection, it's a barrier. It feels like static on a radio station you're trying to listen to. You don't want to talk about the rain because you're already thinking about the way the light looks against the pavement, or a book you read 3 years ago, or why human beings feel the need to fill every silence with sound. And here's where it gets interesting. Often, people assume that if you hate small talk, you must be antisocial or difficult to get to know. But the reality is usually the exact opposite. People who prefer silence over chatter are often the ones most capable of deep, profound intimacy. The real reason you avoid the surface isn't because you're afraid of people. It's because you're looking for something real. You aren't looking for an interaction. You're looking for a presence. There is a psychological phenomenon known as shared presence or parallel play for adults. It's that rare, comfortable state where two people can be in the same room, perhaps even on the same sofa, and not say a single word for an hour. To the outside world, this might look like a lack of connection, but to you, this is the highest form of intimacy. When you can sit in silence with someone, the performance stops. You no longer have to manage your image or maintain the rhythm of a conversation. The nervous system finally feels safe enough to stop doing and start being. In these moments, silence isn't an absence of communication. It's a different language entirely. It's a sign that you trust the other person enough to see you when you aren't on. For many, this preference for silence is a regulatory mechanism. If you've had a day filled with decisions, digital pings, and external demands, your brain is desperate for a low stimulation environment. Small talk, with its unpredictable turns and social requirements, is just more stimulation. Meaningful silence, however, acts as a reset button. It allows your nervous system to downregulate. It's the psychological equivalent of taking off a pair of shoes that are 2 sizes too small. This is why you might find yourself gravitating toward low-stakes social environments. The friend who lets you read a book while they cook, or the partner who understands that a long car ride doesn't need a soundtrack of constant talking. You aren't being quiet. You are being protected. You are preserving your internal energy for the things that actually matter to you. We live in a culture that treats silence as an error. In a world of 24-hour news cycles and constant connectivity, we've been conditioned to believe that if something isn't making noise, it isn't working. We see a gap in a conversation and we feel a frantic urge to fill it with anything. A joke, a complaint, a comment on the scenery. But for you, that gap isn't a hole to be filled. It's a space to breathe. When you stop viewing your hatred of small talk as a social deficit and start seeing it as a psychological preference for depth, everything changes. You realize that you aren't broken at parties. You're just optimized for a different kind of connection. You aren't boring because you don't have an opinion on a celebrity scandal. You're just busy processing things that have more weight. It's an identity pattern that suggests you value the essence of a person over the presentation of a person. You aren't interested in the script. You're interested in the actor. And because the script of small talk is so predictable, it feels like a waste of the limited time we have to truly see each other. If you are one of these people, you've likely spent years feeling like you're doing something wrong. You might have practiced conversation starters in the mirror, or forced yourself to stay at events long after your battery hit zero, just to prove you could do it. But the more you understand the why behind your behavior, the more you can stop apologizing for it. Your preference for meaningful silence isn't a sign that you're disconnected from the world. It's a sign that you are deeply connected to yourself. It's a reflection of a mind that doesn't need external chatter to feel stimulated because it is already engaged with the complexity of existence. The next time you find yourself in a room feeling that familiar urge to slip away from the small talk, remember that it isn't a weakness. It's your brain's way of asking for quality over quantity. It's a search for a shared presence that doesn't require words to be understood. Once you recognize this pattern, you stop trying to fix it. You stop seeing your silence as a wall and start seeing it as a filter, one that eventually lets in the people who don't need you to perform, but who are happy to just sit with you in the quiet. Because at the end of the day, the most important conversations we ever have are often the ones where nothing is said at all. It was never about being antisocial. It was about finding the people whose silence matches your own. And that awareness alone changes how you move through the world. It was never a random habit. It was a pattern of seeking the real. If this explains something for you today, perhaps it's because you've been looking for a reason to finally let the silence be enough. Understanding yourself is the beginning of everything.